suspect. He spent over 26 years behind bars for a crime he did not commit. Let's bring him on. Larry Darnell Smith Jr. How are you?
Absolutely amazing. Fantastic. Everything is
Thank
wonderful.
you for being here. Absolutely. Thank you for being here. You have an incredible story. This happened in Detroit, Michigan, and I've covered a lot of stories in Michigan under the Conviction Integrity Unit. There have been people who have been exonerated, who have been released. So this happened to you back in 1994. I believe you were 18 years old. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
18. So before we get into what happened, just tell me the young man that you were back in 1994 when you were 18 years old, just the young man that you were.
I thought I was just like a cool dude. I got along well with the people in the community. I was always community driven, even from just being young. I come from a background, my mom was a social worker, and she just always instilled in me the value of helping community, being a part. And I don't know what happened. Just woke up one day on a magical ride. I say a horror story.
Right, exactly. So in March of 1994, there was a shooting. A 20-year-old named Kenneth Hayes was shot and killed. I believed he was believed to be a drug dealer. And then later on, if I have this wrong, correct me, the police searched your mother's home. And you had already heard that they were somehow targeting you. And so you had turned yourself in and to talk, not turn yourself in, but you went to the police station, talked to police, and they were searching your mother's home, and they claimed they found all these bullets that were in connection with this shooting. Is this accurate?
Yes, they said they found the spent shell casing, and they said that it matched others that they found at the scene. And unbelievable. I had no spent shell casing and no way of putting one in my home. So I don't know how that stuff, man, happened that way. It didn't come from me or my people. I can say that.
Now, when you first began hearing that you were a suspect, what were you thinking? What went through your mind?
I was in the interrogation room at that moment. I had no knowledge. When my mother called me at work, it was just like my mom called me at work and asked me to go down there. She didn't say why, and I didn't even really question. I hadn't done nothing, and I guess I wasn't bright enough while I was green at that moment, not to even consider like, hey, why my mom asking me to go down here to this police station? Yeah.
And what was the interrogation like with the police? You're 18 years old, you're a teenager, you're in Detroit, Michigan. What was the interrogation like?
It was just accusations being sworn, being thrown. Like, I don't know anything about this. I had no knowledge of this. I don't know what's going on. It was horrible. It was just a horror story to go from being at work, delivering oxygen tanks, to being asked questions, that really is tantamount to your life. And you asking for a lawyer, like, I need a lawyer. Like, this is my whole thing. I need a lawyer. Like, at the point when I tell you I don't know anything about this, I have no knowledge concerning this, I don't know anything, can I get a lawyer? And that's what they denied me, a lawyer, and it just went all downhill from there.
And how did your name even get caught up in this?
Because my friend was out doing his paper route, and whatever took place that morning, they saw his car, not knowing that he was doing a paper route. And they asked some people, well, what did you see? And they say they saw him by a car. He was identified by his car. And then, like I say, ultimately his case would be dismissed because the judge would say you couldn't identify this man by his car. Yeah, I was identified by his car and subsequently convicted. He served 5 months and I served 26 years, 10 months and 7 days. Yeah,
and wasn't the conviction based on one alleged eyewitness who said, yeah, I think I saw him, or he had a similar build to someone who I saw? Is that correct?
Yeah, it was more of they put it together with the fact that they saw that car And the officer asked him, well, who be with that guy? And my name came up. And then that's when all of these other things were alleged to try to create the condition to say it was me. Because remember, they never say they saw the face of the person.
Right.
So they began to try to construct this stuff based on cars and body types and this type of thing. They had to create a case versus going out and work for something. It was tailor-made.
There was no forensic. There was no forensic evidence. There was nothing. Did you know the person?
I didn't even know him.
You didn't even know him.
Wow.
Wow. So explain to me what this trial is like. Explain to me, I mean, you're convicted in November of 94, but what is this trial like? I mean, for folks who may not get it, they're thinking, well, it's so obvious. I mean, just you can't convict somebody on one eyewitness, but you actually can. So explain to me how the trial was.
Well, see, everything is based on he say, she say. You got somebody saying that somebody told them that they saw me. You had somebody saying that they think because of a walk. And you ain't here with a jailhouse snitch with all the information that's being provided to them by law enforcement agency. That's what it really boiled down to in getting the conviction. They used all of their assets that they had to manufacture something, things that they knew was fabricated, like being there in front of a jury for something that you didn't do is just a pure horror story for me. Like, I'm sitting here, I wasn't aware of the law. I had no identity to how the law worked. Like, I just knew from day one when I went to the police station after they started saying what they were saying, that at some point, somebody gonna recognize that this ain't right, that I haven't done anything. Don't none of this stuff say that Larry Darnell Smith Jr. actually did anything, committed any crime.
And you were charged with first-degree murder, felony firearm, and you are convicted and you're sentenced to life without parole. This is November 28th, 1994. When you hear that conviction and that sentence, what goes through your soul? What goes through your mind?
I asked him what they say. I asked my attorney, like, what they say. And he pushed it back away from the table. Like, maybe my look, I don't know. He pushed away from the table from me. And it was like, how do you deduce? How do you come up with this? How is this the measure of a man's life? Like, it's going down the drain, because at this point I'm hearing nothing good about what my future gonna be. You know, I'm playing back what that man said on the stand, the jailhouse snitch, about how my life gonna be, what his intent is, you know, to do to me. Like, all of this stuff is playing. I'm thinking about my little daughter. I'm thinking about the fact that, wow, when that officer told me in that interrogation room that I would never be able to see my daughter or have relationships again, like, these things that these people said they was gonna do to me is actually coming true. And I'm sitting there and I just couldn't believe it. It's like having a life, what it was, flashing before you. And it was just horrible, just a horrible, very horrible experience. I mean, to be able to, whew.
And you mentioned the jailhouse snitch, for folks who may not know. So they said, this jailhouse snitch said that you confessed when you were in jail, but come to find out later that allegedly this jailhouse snitch just said that because he was trying to get favors with the police. Is that accurate?
He was getting favors with them. He had a long-lasting relationship with them that spanned it well before myself. That's the information, like, they leaving out. It's people that's a person for sure. Charles Wilson, who incarcerated 10 years before me, based on the testimony of the same guy who testified against me. They made him a immunized co-defendant. They made him see what they done. They weaponized these men. They gave them get out of jail free cards. And then they began to run rampant on us. And then the officers reap rewards from that. Everybody got checks. Everybody got paid. Look at no matter how you come out now in this current era with the CIU, Miss Valerie Newman, she received paychecks as a defense attorney. based on our backbones. Even though she was fighting on our behalf, she still got those paychecks. Those prosecutors who prosecuted us, they still got those paychecks. Like, it's nothing that you can do. Those officers, they went up the ladder and they was like deemed to be reliable, trustworthy. So again, this person who testified against me, he testified against somebody else, and I just gave it to you by name. You can contact the Conviction Integrity Unit and ask him where his case stand. He was there 10 years before me, and when the man took the stand against me to lie, he said he never done nothing like that before ever in his life. Well, if he never done nothing like that ever before in his life, why is Charlie Wilson in prison 10 years before Larry Darnell Smith Jr., based on the testimony of that man?
So you're behind bars for over 26 years. Tell me how you're getting by, especially in the beginning. You're a young man, you're a teenager. How are you surviving being behind bars?
Well, I had the support of my family, like my mom, my grandmothers, my dad. Like, I had support where I could get money orders and things of that nature. They was assisting me in getting with the appeals, you know, to the best of their knowledge. But mainly I was getting it how I lived. How I was getting it, man, I had to do what I had to do. Like, I couldn't tell on nobody. That wasn't gonna fend nothing off of me. I had to fight because I wasn't gonna do the other part of it. They usually just equated with don't drop the soap. And I wasn't gonna take no psychotropic medication prescribed by the state that wasn't gonna allow me to be able to function in a way that I was gonna be able to regain my freedom. You know, my first days through quarantine, you fought every day. You know, then I went to my second day in the general population. I saw someone raped. I walked in the shower. 8 months, somebody got killed. Rest his soul, Bill. Like, it wasn't easy. It was a constant and consistent struggle to even figure out what the structure was. I had to look at the seniors, like the elder guys who had been there before me. In that part of the prison I was at, when I left quarantine, I went to a general population that was like supposed to have been one of the greatest prisons in the state, a comfortability. Like, I don't know that, because my second day, I seen somebody get raped. At that moment, in 8 months, I seen somebody get killed. And then after that, you know, I was having a difficulty adjusting to facilities, so I would end up going to the whole, being transferred to what they call gladiator school. And then that was just like a whole nother level of it, because now I was intensified for what was an option at the other facility was now mandatory. So like at the other facility, if you chose to carry something to protect yourself, that was one thing. But then when I went to gladiator school, that was mandatory. Like, it was just certain things and rules that you had to abide by where you was a victim. And ain't no ifs, ands, or buts. So it was just a crash course on what it had to be. And if you was gonna stand on 10 and make it through. Yeah.
Wow. So you are eventually released February of 2021, a little over a year ago. You were 45 years old when you were released. Briefly explain to the audience how this release finally happens after 26 years, 10 months, and 7 days.
Well, it like, when you say finally, the leading up to it, all them denials, all the times where they told me to die, they came out with that Conviction Integrity Unit. And my mom, Deborah Smith, like her, Teresa Bond, they was relentless and chasing down these meetings that Kim Worthy had to make it be known that I was in prison for a crime I didn't commit. So the thing about my story is just not my story. It's my family story, but it's also other guys. When you look at like Ramon Ward, Bernard Howard, Lucino Hamilton, myself, all of us was directly convicted within months of one another and then released within months of one another. All our cases are separate. We got similar, same police, and we got jailhouse snitches. That was all part of a ring.
Yeah, and so do I have this right? You aren't officially exonerated. They just said we don't have enough evidence to do a new trial. Is that accurate?
Man, on the paperwork, they say that the case is convicted because I ain't do it. Like, on the paperwork, they saying that newly discovered evidence. See, that's what I'm saying. They playing with the words, because remember, I never been to court.
Right.
So it's all on paper. Now, if you look at the exonerees that come out of Wayne County and you assess, let's see how many of these guys went on video, went in front of a judge, And then how many just walked out of their period and just walked out and was talking to Kimberly Craig and their family on the news. So it tell you it got to be some type of major violations that occurred for them just to even be able to do that. Like, why would they even do that way? You know, so
Yeah, you know,
I'm exonerated. And to me,
right.
I'm exonerated. The only part that's missing is the money because they put that stipulation on there. They say that when you wrongfully convicted, in order to make you whole, that they got these resources that's set in place. So if you got these resources that's set in place because this is the part of what's gonna make you whole, then why would you give me what you saying that I'm entitled to?
Right.
And you know, since we on here, it's a guy, exoneree, his name Chancellor. I was just reading this article. And you got the Wayne County prosecutor in a deposition saying that this person was innocent, the officer lied on him. But the officer went inside of a deposition in his full uniform and testified that, hey, I ain't did nothing wrong. I ain't been disciplined. And even though they let this man out of prison saying that I set him up, they tripping. Internal Affairs tripping. Everybody tripping. And the union is backing this man, though. Like the police union is putting a full-fledged into backing him. When I'm out in the public, they tell me about how they so sorry about what took place and happened to me in my life. I watch them say this about other exonerees as well. When yet and still, how can the union get behind one of their guys when he just clear cut and bold and wrong? Like, that's a slap in the face against all exonerees. You know, not just here in Michigan, but across the country. In another state, when they refuse to compensate and exonerate, that's a slap in the face to all of us who spent time in prison for crimes we didn't commit. Because they don't just let you out because, oh, we got this technicality. No, they misleading the public when they tell you that. They got overwhelming evidence that show you ain't do it. They just want to try to keep down on the cap of paying people out. So they got to wheel it and deal it and working in the best way that's suitable. So that the public, because when I meet people, the first thing they think like, oh, I done got compensated. Oh, you got to be straight. They don't know that all these rules and hurdles that they got in place, and they like major stipulation that's holding us down. It's like putting a weight on our neck and we underwater. And every couple of seconds you do get up just to go. A lot of us got issues, mental health issues, and the only thing that can help us to handle them is to have more resources. Yeah.
You know, what's crazy is that I cover these stories every week. And I think what's the most heinous is that the people, the prosecutors, the police, the judges, and so on, there's rarely ever any kind of repercussions. They ruin people's lives and nothing happens. And like you said, backed by police unions and so on. And that's the crazy thing, because it's a culture that attracts corruption. If you can do this to somebody without repercussions, then you can keep on doing it and get away with it. And that's what I think is really disgusting, that there's no one ever pays for locking somebody up. It's just crazy. Let me ask you this, though. When I cover a lot of these stories in Detroit, unlike other stories, normally, Black men are 7 times more likely to be wrongfully convicted. But the nuance about Detroit is that it's oftentimes Black police officers and sometimes even Black judges and so on that have been a part of this as well. Was that your experience or no?
Yeah, absolutely. The judge was Black. One of the prosecutors, he was white, but the whole thing is a culture of corruption that bleed from the heart. So it ain't about how at that point with the color. Like them officers, yeah, they was Black. The ones that did this to me, the jailhouse snitches was Black. When my appeals was being denied, the head prosecutor, she was Black. So yeah, it's on both ends of the spectrum. I just want people to understand in this country that, yeah, absolutely, it could be you. But once you a person and you like me and you've been scarred by this system, been violated, what am I to do? Am I to put my hands in my face? Or am I to get the word out across the country with the youth, with the adults, that just not the fact that you got wrongful convictions, but you got the elders inside of the institutions who helped to raise those such as myself that's living virtual death sentences of old age. And now being in society, and my mom who walked through this with me, she currently in this rehab center where she broke her hip. And I'm watching like the process of how these things run and how they lack in staff and how it's so equated to being inside a prison institution. Because, you know, as you know, it's an institution, rehabs, hospitals, military, prison, they all ran under the same from the top down mentality. And now I'm seeing this mentality that I was raised with in prison put on our seniors in this society. And it's like, whoa, they mandate they nurses if you work at the hospital, but if you work through the agency, you can leave and you can go. Well, what that does is they don't get to know the people. So they're giving subpar treatment. And I think a lot of this stuff that I'm experiencing is learning from where I came from that prison experience and dealing with these institutions and giving me a voice and finding other people with a voice like you to be able to get the word out. You know, that we need to get these formerly incarcerated people like exonerees, medically frail, over sentenced. We need to get people together who've been affected so that we can step out, and not only in our districts, but across the country, down there in Washington, D.C., to speak about this stuff that's taking place, why these police can't be prosecuted, why these prosecutors, people scared. Do you know that people, when you talk about suing prosecutors, people say, oh, you can't do that, like without even researching the law. They say you can't do that because that's what we've been instilled for all of these years. But as these cases be chipping away and these laws is changing, I'm hopeful to see more of these people held accountable. Because what happened to me and these other guys across the country is a travesty, a horror story. It affected our families. We came home for those who had loved ones left and they died. They had to watch and sit by and bury their parents. Like, I'm going through it right now, watching my mother age and trying to get her out this rehab and get her back active in the community, out here with me, you know, advocating on behalf of people. So we just covered a lot there, I know.
No. It's important, man. It's really, really important. I do want to say that, like you said, the state of Michigan has not compensated you. There should be a federal law. I think $1 million, $5 million for each year, something, but that obviously hasn't happened. It's states' rights why they don't have these a federal law for the wrongfully convicted.
That's right. And let me say this: while you said that, this real talk, what you just said, I love it. And I've been saying to guys across the country, exonerees, like, let's march down on our individual states. And let's say to our individual states, we need some form of compensation coming down from the top. And what I mean is they need incentives. They need to incentivize states to compensate. The federal government do. So when we bring it to the states, and if the states agree, cool. If the states don't agree, then we need to meet down in Washington, D.C. as a collective. And then that way that we can, you know, discuss some of these major issues that we have in this country, like the Anti-Effective Death Penalty Act, like the 13th Amendment. But just bringing people together in a discussion down in Washington, D.C. Will show a form of solidarity. And it just, like I say, it happens to, I got Asian exoneree brothers, Haitian exoneree brothers, of course, brothers right out of Southwest Detroit, where I'm from, exoneree brothers, all over Michigan, exoneree brothers, like all across the country, Chicago, Albert and them, like literally, if you name a state almost, it's one of us. But not only that, it's returning citizens in those states. And we are returning citizens. We just people who didn't commit a crime to be there. Nevertheless, we still all are formerly incarcerated. And that's something that we ain't gonna never be able to shake. That's something we ain't gonna never be able to say, oh no, I wasn't formerly incarcerated. Oh no, that's not true. Yes, you were. You just were innocent. You feel me? So
Right. I do want to tell everybody, I know it's tough times out there, but if you can, if you'd like to donate to Larry Darnell Smith Jr.'s Cash App, it is $DayAleg. That's DAYALEG as in go, $ at the top. So if you can, again, I know it's tough, but if you're able to, you know, feel free. We got to do our best to take care of our own. Larry Darnell Smith Jr., I want to say thank you so much for coming on. How can folks follow you and support you?
Instagram and Facebook is either Larry Smith Butter or Larry Butter Smith. National Organization Exonerees. I'm on Facebook and Instagram, Larry Butter Smith, Larry Smith Butter. Find me at a local rec center near you.